Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Today is September 16th, 2021. This is the regularly scheduled meeting of the Board of Education. Please forgive our delay as we had a disruption here. The disruption was in relationship to mask wearing. In addition, I'd like to notify everyone in the community that while on PK through 12 school district property indoors, we are required by the New York State Department to have mandatory masking. In addition, as adults, you should try to remain as socially distanced as possible. So, without further ado, we had to address the situation, and unfortunately, if an individual does not choose to mask on our property, they will be asked to leave. If they do not leave, they will be escorted out by local law enforcement, and ultimate consequences of being able to be on property are at risk. We wish not to do this, but however, we are required to follow the State Department of Health public safety laws. We will ask and thank everybody for their compliance so that those people that wish to have a voice may also have a voice and come forward and talk as long as we follow the rules that we are all governed under. At this point, I'd like to turn the Board of Education meeting over for September to our President, Ms. Christine Dale.
Okay, thank you. Can everybody please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, so first up on our agenda this evening is our approval from the minutes from our last meeting, which was last week, September 9th. It was a special meeting to review our capital improvement project. So can I have a motion, please? Any comments or discussion regarding the minutes? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Any abstentions? Okay, next up on our agenda is our public comment section. We allot a total of 30 minutes on our agenda for public comment. Anybody from the community is welcome to join us, to come up to the podium, state their name and their address, and pose a question, comment, concern. This is not a two-way dialogue. We will listen to what the community member has to say, but it's not going to be an immediate response. So if there's anybody in the audience that would like to step up to the podium, you have 3 minutes. We just ask you to state your name and your address.
Luana Morse, 303 Pine Valley Road. I do have a question for the school board regarding some of the COVID policy. The policy on the school website states that if there is a known exposure, the current policy is to quarantine unvaxxed students, while those who are vaccinated do not have to quarantine and miss school. I have a printout from the CDC website that states if you are fully vaccinated, you should get tested 3 to 5 days after your exposure, which to me is saying that they are acknowledging even with a vaccine you could catch the virus. And they're also saying if you're fully vaccinated and become infected, you can spread the virus to others. So my question is, why is there a difference for the children between vaccinated and unvaccinated? If this quarantine policy is to truly stop the transmission and truly in the spirit of the health of the student and the staff, then anyone, regardless of vaccination status, should have to quarantine in the event of an exposure. The current policy, to me, I'm sorry to say, is sounding very coercive and bullying to push parents into vaccinating their kids while ignoring the fact that many of the kids may already have natural immunity. And there's no conversation about that. We don't know what happens if a kid has natural immunity. Are they going to be considered vaccinated or unvaccinated? Again, to treat the students and staff differently, to me, is discrimination. I'm not here to argue the effectiveness of the vaccines. I'm not here to say don't quarantine. I simply want to have all the students treated equally. I also want to be able to weigh all the information given to me before I make a decision for my children that can potentially cause serious long-term complications. Studies out of California and Europe are showing that teenage boys aged 12 to 15 are 6 times more likely to develop heart problems following the second dose of the vaccine than they are to be hospitalized from COVID. Given that this age range has a very low chance of having more than mild symptoms, and to know that they are more likely to suffer heart problems from the vaccine than to be hospitalized really says something to me as a parent. Why would I, as a parent, take the greater risk of vaccine injury for my 13-year-old son, knowing that he has already gone through COVID this past summer, and we barely even knew it? To tell parents that they need to blindly follow the recommendations in order for their children to simply not have to be in quarantine is very coercive. This school board should not create a policy that can be used in this means to push parents to make a decision that has the potential to be detrimental to the health and safety of their children. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to speak? Just to remind you, 3 minutes, and then if you could state your name and your address, please.
Hi, my name is Julie Burgess, and I live at 54 Sing Sing Road in Horseheads. I just want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak with you all tonight. I really appreciate all you're doing for our students and our teachers and staff in the Horseheads School District. I grew up attending the Horseheads schools and graduated from here, and our kids have been in these schools for most of their education. I call this home, and I just care about what's going on. I know the COVID pandemic has been difficult for all of us to go through. I think after 18 months, we're kind of tired of it, all the decisions. So many extra decisions and considerations have needed to be made on top of the normal issues that you guys all are dealing with. I know school districts are getting a lot of pressure on the state and national level to do and to not do certain things. I appreciate all the time and effort you have taken to navigate through this and that you're still taking. So I just have some questions today regarding how students are being handled, if they have close contact to someone with COVID. The district's health and safety guide, I referenced it online, seems to address those who have been vaccinated. Only those who have been vaccinated or unvaccinated. But I'm wondering how the students who have been tested and have high levels of antibodies, Luana just actually spoke to that, how are they being treated? Because it's kind of like there's two categories, it seems. Like, where do they fall if they've been exposed to somebody who's been positive? So I just wondered if you could discuss that. Also, the district said it will use COVID-19 screening testing in its extracurricular activities with elevated risk. So I think that's the sports, marching band, things like that. What will happen if a student tests positive from a PCR test, yet they might test positive because they had COVID recently, and they have actually even received false positive tests since the infection? So then, is it okay for them to go to their doctor and get like a non-PCR test that's negative? And will that kind of reinstate them back into things? So that's just a little concerning. I know a lot of, I think the PCR test maybe overall be effective and accurate, but sometimes there are those false positives. So let's see, in addition to these questions, I just want to express my concern that some students might be unnecessarily taken out of school. I think I've heard that in the high school that there's already kids, being taken out. And I'm just wondering, it goes again with the vaccinated versus the non-vaccinated, both of them being exposed in close contact. I think it was the 15 minutes in a 24-hour period.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but if you can just try to wrap it up just so we can stick to it. Thank you.
So we know that both vaccinated and unvaccinated people can develop symptoms and spread the virus. So why is it then that an exposed non-vaccinated student is being sent home without having any symptoms? And I'm just concerned, a 10-day absence, especially in the high school level with the semester scheduling, could really hinder them from doing well academically. And these prolonged absences could be multiple in one semester. So I just wondered if you could address that. So that's basically the issues. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to speak? Okay. So I would just like to thank both of you for coming. It is really nice for us to hear from community members. You know, we do listen to the concerns, we do read the emails, we do take all of that into consideration. And so I just want you to know that we do appreciate it. So thank you very much.
If I can, normally I'd do it in my report, but we've lost a little time, so I'll try to do some of that. I'll try to remember all the questions, so please bear with me. In regards to, and we are going to go over it because I'm revising the actual plan that we had on the first because we've got some new guidance as well. Just because it says it in the CDC does not mean that that's the absolute guidance for the state. We use CDC as reference, but we go by the New York State Department of Health. Just so that most people know, the school district doesn't decide quarantine or isolation orders or issues. We have to be part of that to give the information to the Chemung County Department of Health, but they have a flow chart that we must follow. And the hard part about it is, for those that are unvaccinated, it's true. If they have exposure, what's considered close contact, they end up going into roughly about a 10-day quarantine period. And the Department of Health puts them into that and then takes them out of it. If a student is vaccinated, or I think what you said, may have already had COVID, the timing is the issue for the student that's had COVID. That information all gets either given to us or we give it to the Department of Health, and then they make the determination the best they can on the information they have. So if I was COVID positive 2 weeks ago and I'm around somebody and I've already recovered, the health department, most likely, if I gave them that information, would not put me into a quarantine unless I was symptomatic. If I'm vaccinated and was around it, they would not put me into a quarantine, even though I could be asymptomatic and spread it. That's just their rule. But if I'm symptomatic, even vaccinated, I must go into the same quarantine period. And that's a misconception. Because what happens is, unfortunately, I will tell you, we have cases. And we have cases rising, but I think in general, the area is at its top part, like we were last October, just because of the Delta variant. The real issue, however, is the fact that we need to knock the transmission as much as possible down, and the Department of Health gives us the opportunity to do that by giving them the information to try to minimize those students that have to go into quarantine. Last year, it was if you were within 6 feet for 15 minutes. This year, if you're fully masked, I think they've reduced it to 3 feet, but it's still that 15-minute timeline. So every situation is, unfortunately, a unique situation. Just like with our athletes, what will happen? If one athlete is out in practice and they come down, they may have contacted 15, 20 different athletes. It may shut down the team. That's one of the reasons why we are trying to get testing up as quick as possible. We just finished our consent forms for all athletics. There's no such thing as high risk anymore. Any of those, like field band and stuff, those students, we need to know, if they're vaccinated or if they're not. The school district does not care. We will not ask anybody to get vaccinated. That is a state legislative thing and a parent's choice. And that's how we've always done it. Those that are vaccinated potentially have more outs, so to speak, if they're exposed. But again, that's all governed by the Department of Health. We only support and help them. So hopefully I've tried to clear that up. And unfortunately, there will be more unvaccinated that will have to quarantine because there's not many outs for them, except I wore my mask and I was under 15 minutes with the person in 24 hours, sort of like what you said. So we are trying to update that. I think it's always an ebb and flow. We want to keep kids here as much as possible. We don't want to close, and I will tell you, not many people want to wear masks. I love going outside more than ever now. But we are under orders, and this board, myself, my administrative team, the staff must comply with New York State Department of Health orders. So that's where we're at, and I know, Luana, you've asked questions. I know you'll reach out. If there is anything I missed, please just send me an email, include your phone number. I give a call to everybody, and I'll try to answer anything else. Okay? But I do appreciate you all staying and just complying. I know it may not be something everybody wants to do. We don't get to make the rules. We must enforce them, and we don't like having to. That's why you guys, we appreciate you staying around, because we do want to hear from you.
Thank you. Okay, so moving on to the next area of our agenda. This is our report from our student representative, and new this year we have Caitlin Odell, who we're very excited to be joining us, and would like to welcome her to her first official board meeting. Caitlin.
Thank you. Good evening, members of the board and Horseheads community. The day before school started, cheerleaders and other students cheered as staff entered the new stadium, and 4 members of our choir sang the national anthem. As we all very well know, we just opened our new stadium, and we had a 3-for-3 win weekend. The football team kicked off their season in the new stadium with a game against Vestal and won 20-0. The marching band also officially kicked off their season at this game by performing their show Black Swan at halftime and playing stand tunes. The Rowdy Raider section was in full swing with cheers and spirit. Girls soccer also gained a win in the new stadium against Corning, as well as boys soccer. In other Horsehead sports news, girls golf beat Ithaca, and girls tennis blanked Elmira this week 7-0. Marching band performed at Jordan Elbridge High School last Saturday and received a score of 73.95, taking first place in the division for the night. At the same performance in 2019, they received a score of 72.85 and are incredibly proud of the fact that the coronavirus has not stopped the improvement and progress of the band. At the high school this week, elementary and intermediate school students arrived in the evenings for some instrument showcases demonstrated by some of the high school band members so that kids can decide what instruments they'd like to play. GRP will be participating in a global theater experience. The show will be called All Together Now, where they will perform about 15 different Broadway music numbers. This will occur November 12th and 13th. There will be a parent info meeting on September 22nd here in the auditorium for anyone to attend. The freshman, sophomore, and junior classes are currently holding elections for class officers and are incredibly excited to kick off the new school year. The senior class is thrilled to be back in person and helped to welcome their class by decorating parking spaces with chalk art. The senior class will be kicking off their class fundraiser, Simply Delicious, on September 21st and ask you to consider helping your favorite senior reach the top of the prize pyramid. The fundraiser will occur through October 7th.
Great, thank you. Sounds like it's been a busy start of the year. Congratulations to all of the sports teams and especially to our field bands for their great win on Saturday. So it's been definitely a great start of the year for everybody. So thank you, Caitlin. Next on our agenda is time for our presentations, and we have Tom Zuber to go through our external audit report.
Good evening. Just make sure this is working. I will do my best. I'll try and keep this under 3 minutes. Again, as you mentioned, my name's Tom Zuber. I'm one of the partners with Mango Metzger Bar. We're your external auditors. And we met with your audit committee on Monday, and we reviewed the draft financial statements for the Horseheads Central School District. And I believe the final versions of the financial statements have been uploaded for you folks to review. So So I'd like to just make a few comments. Again, on Monday, we did meet with the audit committee and spent quite a bit of time, about 45 minutes, on the basic financial statements, and we had a very good discussion. We talked about year-over-year variances, we talked about reserves, we talked about budget variances, and we did spend a lot of time. I'm pleased to report we issued an unqualified opinion, no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies. That really is the financial statement that the financial statement that you're looking for. So that's very positive. But as you know, just like all school districts in New York State, there are several challenges that districts continue to face. State aid uncertainties, certainly some challenges out there with that. Property tax cap. Employee benefits, certainly some challenges there, and obviously the pandemic issues that are out there. And then you do have some federal stimulus funds, so you do have some good news in some of the new monies that you'll be getting going forward. But again, a lot of different challenges for school districts out there. And I think the school district, the results of the financial statements do show that the school district, like many other school districts, ended the year in very good financial condition. Okay, and I think we see that across the board. We've audited about 70 school districts in BOCES, and I think for the most part we are seeing school districts end the year in very good financial condition. And it really is primarily because of a lot of the decisions that school districts made throughout the year. You know, knowing that there was a lot of uncertainty this year in what was going on, school districts did make some very good decisions. And as you can see, when we look at the financial condition, we really focus on the general fund and really your reserves and fund balances. And again, the school district does a very good job. Not only do you have reserves and fund balances, you can see the activity on the right-hand column there. And again, during the year, the Board of Education approved the funding of a little over $5 million into a capital reserve, which again is very, very positive. So you have a little over $10 million set aside in the capital reserve, really to help support the local portion of an upcoming project, of a future project. So again, very positive to have those dollars set aside. Certainly reduces the tax burden on those types of activities. So not only do you have those reserves and fund balances, you're using those reserves and fund balances as part of your budget process. Okay, which again is very positive. You can see you supported the 2021 budget with a little over $2.6 million in reserves and fund balance, which means you didn't levy a tax equal to $2.6 million. All right, so again, that's something that we like to talk to districts about, making sure they monitor, because we don't want that number to get too high, because just to break even from one year to the next, you have to generate budgetary surpluses equal to that. So again, something you want to continue to monitor. And you can see from 2020-21 to 21-22, you did reduce your use of reserves and fund balances. So again, very positive. So again, very good financial results. I won't spend any time on the next two slides, but just globally, you generated about $81 million in total revenues for the year. So again, some very positive budget variances, primarily in the state aid, came in a little bit better than expected because of some of the building project activity that took place. And then overall, your expenditures, you spent about $78 million. Again, you spent about 95% of your budget. Okay, so from one year to the next. So again, that's fairly consistent with years past, but of a budget of $82 million, you spent about $78 million, so about 95% of the budget you spent. Okay, so again, overall, the school district ended the year in very good financial condition. You've developed your reserves over the years, you're using your reserves, and you're looking to the future and replenishing those reserves at the end of the year. So again, very positive from the financial statement standpoint. Okay, so that was one of the basic financial statements. The other document that you should have received is the internal control communication. Again, I'm pleased to report there were no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies, just a few minor procedural items that we talk about for the district to consider moving forward. Okay, so again, very, very positive financial results, and very good, pleased to report no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies. And really the last bullet point, one of the items that we recommended last year, the district implemented, very positive from the financial statement standpoint, shows that the district is reacting to our recommendations. So again, very positive from the audit side of it. Okay? So again, we did spend quite a bit of time with the audit committee and talked in detail about the financial conditions and again, very, very positive results. Anybody have any questions?
Great. Any questions for Tom? Great, thank you very much. Really nice to see. I want to, thank you, but I also really want to thank Katie and her team because there's just been a significant diligence over the years, and it's nice and it's appreciated how much you stay on top of this and just make sure that we are being financially responsible in the district. So thank you to you and your entire team.
And just one question, Tom, I ask it every year. No issues of known fraud or anything, and you've been consulted on the Office of the State Comptrollers, and we're in pretty good shape or not so good shape?
Yeah, again, I think based on the year-end financial condition and financial results, the school district ended the year in very positive financial condition. So I think that's really where you want to be.
Okay. Katie, do you have anything else? I concur with Ms. Dale. I've got a wonderful team, and it's nice to have these types of audits as well as what we will be seeing coming out from the Office of the State Comptroller soon.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Our superintendent report is next.
I am going to try to keep mine very, very brief just because we've had a heck of a lot of meetings, but I do want to share as Katie gets this up, our safety plan that we said that we would make decisions in between and then bring them back to the board so that you know what we've done. What happened is sort of in regards to some of our comments from our public tonight, those are actually two of the major areas that we were working on as we've gotten more information from the State Department of Health and our local county Department of Health, and we're getting ready to implement some surveillance testing in the very near future once we have all the I's dotted and T's crossed. Is it coming up, or?
I don't know why the screen went
Mr. Gill, could you help out? But as they're trying to get that ready, I have to say exactly what Caitlin said in regards to opening. Not only did we have 3 wins, we actually had 5 because of the JVs, but every one of our teams was the first team to score on that field. And then I know Caitlin knows to start off field band higher than you started in 2019 at your very first show and then went on to become the state champions is quite a remarkable feat of all. So we are looking forward down the road to having our own home show, but as we go through this year, we will look for great things to come from all of our teams. I would ask if any board member wants to be a supervisor tomorrow night. We'd appreciate any help we can get. We do have about 20 supervisors for our first night football game with Elmira here in Horseheads. It is expected to be quite of a large crowd. So we will probably have to put in some management devices of people having to be in their seats, not roaming around, to make sure that we have adequate safety and crowd control. And I've even heard our own county executives coming out for that game. So I told him I'll meet him and he can help out. He's a big guy. So in regards to the opening, I can't say enough about our faculty, our staff, our parents, different things that have gone on through the construction to try to get us to this point, and most importantly, our outstanding maintenance and technology crew, because honestly, we were only a couple days away from opening and it really looked a mess, but everybody pulled together and people are getting set up, and we were able to open as if it was never even a summer of construction. And that's to say a lot because we did almost $30 million worth of construction in one summer, which is certainly a challenge. So kudos to everyone. We are trying to make sure that we stay open 5 days a week. But I must ask the public for their extreme assistance. We have had parents send students that are symptomatic to school. We are not putting out that screening because a lot of people were not necessarily completing it. But the rule is still the same. If your child has any symptoms, please keep them home, and we will be talking about that in just a minute to help provide guidance. But for us to stay open, it is the responsibility of every parent and every student and every staff member to comply so that we minimize any types of potential quarantines or isolations that could affect staffing or opportunity. If our attendance drops too low, if the state says we have to go to remote, we're trying to avoid that, and we need everybody's help, and I know the board supports that. So please, help us. A little time at home, working offline with the teachers and staff at every level is better than everybody going home offline for an indefinite period of time, and we are doing everything to stop that. So at this point, I'd like the board to pay attention up at the top. We have our safety plan that you've seen, and this is what's online. We've had to make a couple adjustments since we last met last week. The main area, what we tried to do is highlight everything. And this goes with staying home. We got direction from the county health department, and that is all that's in the yellow now. So if you'd like to read that, these are things that help people understand how they can go about the isolation, the quarantine, the options that they have. Again, we don't make this determination. It really gets made by the Department of Health, and we have it. And of course, you see at the bottom, no one with symptoms should attend school. We really ask everybody to pay attention to that. Not only in our district, but any district in New York State, if we really want our kids here 5 days a week throughout the entire year. Does anybody have any questions on this part? So this is a modification we're making to the plan. I told you we'd do it, but we'd bring it to the plan, bring it to the board. Just by a show of thumbs up, is everybody okay with this?
Can I just have another minute to read the...
Oh, sure, feel free. And we were working on this right up until now, so I apologize, but we just got all this information in the past day.
Just, should it maybe, in addition to saying no one with symptoms should attend school, or up above where we say enter schools and buildings, should it also say or participate in school events, or do we cover that elsewhere? But
I think that would be good to add to that point too,
because of students and attending athletic events or other events that.
Because I know one of the things, we just did our consent form for all athletics. I've been around to the athletics. The kids are basically talking to each other. How do we make sure we ensure our season comes to completion? Just like I know field band. I got 100 and something kids, and they, at least on the field, they do stay spread out. But they have to travel together, and they all are really worried that there are quarantines coming, and they are coming. I know there's some in field band. I know they're on sports teams. I know they're in classrooms. But ultimately, the community is really the responsible party to it. We try to help out. And I think that participation in school events, I think I'd want it down on the major flag down below. But we will take care of that tomorrow. So good suggestion.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I think that's a great add. Yeah.
Because look at tomorrow, I'm estimating we could have anywhere from 4,000 to 7,000 people tomorrow night. We are working with the county to see if we can even have that many, and we may have to restrict attendance. Because honestly, even in a normal year, that many people is a challenge. During this time, because there is no masking requirements, those that are unvaccinated are expected to mask, but it's an honor system with that many people. That we're going to have a little conversation with the county office tomorrow just to say, okay, how best to handle this. Now, the other part is sports and extracurriculars. we go into things with good intentions of, in competitions being masked and stuff, but we can't really do that with opposing competitions coming on. So what we tried to do is modify it that during our practices, the things that we can control on the general day and to protect our kids when they're not in competition, that they should wear masks. In other words, I'm on the sideline at practice, I'm waiting, hey, Mr. Christmas, how you doing, da-da-da. It's not a problem. The kids even said it's not a problem to wear a mask there. When they go out to participate, they remove the mask in practice. The hard part is when you're at a competition. Like on Friday night, we really wanted them to wear the mask on the sideline, but it is difficult with the helmet and kids going in and out of the play, that's really the competition surface. So once they enter that competition surface, at that point, masking is not the issue at that point. So we are amending this to say that physical distancing is required, 6 feet is required for adult spectators when they're inside, outside of the household. Physical distancing is also highly recommended for athletes and student participants. So that's for the indoor-outdoor advisor coach. But down below, we tried to modify it for teams and extracurricular activities that operate outdoors. All advisors, coaches, spectators, and participants must wear masks when not engaged in the activity and on the sidelines or in close proximity during practices. In other words, you got to wear them. We've sort of identified that practice realm or practice performance. While in competition, outdoors, or actively engaged in the sport or playing musical instruments during a game or performance, masks do not need to be worn unless otherwise directed to do so by the district, New York State Department of Health, and so forth. That still goes in line with what we were saying before. It's just that sideline, which there's not a lot of control during an event, but they're all there. Yes.
So just clarification on that. So is that also for coaches? Because technically coaches and advisors
must wear masks.
So coaches,
yes,
still during competition, need to be masked.
Yes, the adults must wear,
Okay, so that doesn't say that up there. So, because it basically says, at the first sentence you say, all advisors, coaches, spectators, and participants must wear masks when not engaged in activity. But then down below, while in competition, then masks do not need to be worn.
So we need another sentence in there about coaches during that competition.
While in competition, masks by the participants don't need to be worn.
Very good. You got that?
I'm just highlighting it.
I have a wonderful person who's editing on the fly because it's a live document.
That's fine. Yeah, and I just want it because
No, I think what happens is we look at things so much that by doing this process, it helps us refine it a little better too. And then we put in, however, physical distancing and proper mask use are highly recommended.
Right.
So even if you're on the football sideline and you're not masked, try as much as possible. Keep your distance, because I know all I got to do is tell our kids, because they don't really want to go into a situation where they shut down the team. And the hard part about it is if I take football, one kid is positive and they're in a game situation or a practice situation, they're unmasked, almost the whole team has to quarantine.
Yep.
That's the hard part, because we'll try to cohort as much as possible, offense and defense, but you can't play with no defense.
Yep.
Same for swimming or anything else. So we're trying to do what as much as possible, as reasonable as possible. Yes?
You mentioned spectators must wear masks during practice, but then like during a game, you don't have to wear masks?
Outdoors,
Right.
spectators, it's highly recommended.
But in the first sentence,
Yep.
Okay?
I see it.
you must wear
Okay. And we'll correct that. Yep.
No question mark, but yes.
Okay. Okay, then students are not to participate in extracurricular activities if they have symptoms. We just clarified that. Horseheads will use COVID-19 screening testing for all student athletes. It doesn't matter whether you're vaccinated or not. We're going to use it, but right now we are going to focus more on our unvaccinated, because we've got to have something that we are able to do with scale and test that many people in a week's time. And then if we can grow or if we have the need, we're in conversation with the county health department on those requirements. Now, you all heard last year, high risk, high risk, high risk. There's no such thing as high risk. All the sports have potential elevated risk because they could have loud voice, increased exultation, shouting, singing, band, and exercise. So we're looking at our major activities in this, such as field band, green room players, where they're around each other for extended period of times in large groups. We are not looking at this for like clubs that meet once a month or something like that, as well as our sports teams. All of our kids have been very good about it. They've signed up and they know that we may not have to test you, but we want to try to get that testing started so that we can try to minimize any type of potential exposure. And our coaches are being very diligent about, if you have symptoms, stay home, don't come, we'll worry about the others outside. All students participating in extracurricular activities with and or without an elevated risk, because that's the term that they use, will need to consent to testing in order to participate. We talked about this the last time. Those students who are unvaccinated will be tested to continue their ongoing participation in athletics, major extracurricular activities, and it's really at this time. It may expand to every single student if we have capacity. And they may say we no longer have to test, but at this time, we need to set that up. And this is a privileged sport and activity. Going down, I think that's everything. Go ahead.
On that section, if you could scroll back up, I think I understand the intent. No, I'm sorry, with the section we were looking at about
down at
course
the bottom.
as we use COVID.
There you go.
Sorry,
Right
gotcha.
there.
Yeah, but I need the beginning of that bullet point.
Keep going.
There you go. So I understand what you're saying, Dr. Douglas,
Yeah.
and it makes sense that it currently.
It might be may use.
Well, I just wanted, so we're saying all students have to consent to testing. Currently, the plan is to only test unvaccinated.
Correct.
But I think the first sentence it's a little inconsistent.
Conflicts with that.
Because it makes it sound like we're going to test everyone, and then down below, so I think maybe up above it's something about may use or some way to say we're reserved the right to test all based on current circumstances. We're only testing this group, but that may change as circumstances dictate.
We'll work on that then,
Yeah.
because I also don't want just student athletes, because it's not just student athletes, it's student athletes and major activities and stuff, so we want to clarify that.
Yeah.
But that's basically any adaptions that we have made right now.
Students be tested. Right now, you're just going to giving priority to unvaccinated.
Right.
What will be the determinations as far as is it testing capacity when you move from testing unvaccinated to all students that are participating or who are athletic?
I think that depends on consultation with the Department of Health, some of the resources that they may have, because like right now it's like 400 tests a week just for athletics, and we know we probably have about 120 for staff. That's like 3 times the amount we were doing last year, plus we've got all the kids here. The county's trying to come up with a device that does that. We are thinking potentially we may do pool testing for all the vaccinated and then Binex testing for all the unvaccinated. The reason why is the vaccinated tend to have the known immunity, that pool testing is a little delayed. The Binex is 15 minutes, so those that don't have any immunity that we know of, we can try to make sure we have a regular surveillance going. So say I had 100 students in athletics, and I'd sit there and say, you two are on Monday, you two are on Tuesday, to try to space that out so that we can handle that plus the daily workload. So, but it really comes down to capacity, and that's where the county's been really good. They're trying to put funding, but it's just trying to work out the details and the timing of it. That's what's taking everybody a little time, because we got this mandate the Friday before we started school.
But it is the district's opinion that ideally all student athletes and students participating in extracurriculars would be tested.
I think that helps if we can build that capacity to try to minimize the impact of those programs. I'd love to be able to do it to our whole school, but you're talking, 5,000 tests a week. We do not have that capacity. If they can do pool testing, we still don't, but if somebody came in, we could probably arrange it. And I think that's what the county's trying to do. The problem is, all counties are trying to do it with the same company. And we know that's going to be an effort in futility. So that's what we have. We're really trying to keep things moving and positive going forward. I think people are trying the best they can in light of this time. We're hoping that everything's peaking. It does look like it's peaking. I believe we will know more about our data because the data is high over the next 7 days. And then if it goes with the trends that it have, at the end of the next 7 days, we would have had about 21 to 28 days where we're at the top, and it should start to decrease. That's what we're hoping. So that's what we have. I just want to keep it short so we can get through the business and move along because you guys deserve a little break.
Go ahead.
So just to clarify, there's no state county mandate that we test all students in extracurriculars.
What was that, the last, I just couldn't hear the last part. All students?
Yeah, there's no state or county mandate that says we have to test any students in extracurriculars.
No, there is no mandate that we have to. We have not even asked for consent. One is a capacity issue, but there is a state requirement that we have to provide opportunities or referrals that the county's trying to figure out how to do that.
And just so I understand the implications of this, so if a parent, student refuses to test, then they are out of the extracurricular activity?
Only for those that are privileged events such as athletics, as well as like field band, major activities. Those are things that are options for individuals, and we have already had that discussion where that was something that was put into place, that they would know that that's coming.
Okay. I'm not in favor of mandatory testing for extracurriculars. I think a voluntary system would essentially do the same thing as you're saying. The athletes don't want their season to go by the boards because of a positive test. So I think you'll get a lot of voluntary compliance. I think if we go beyond state and county mandates here on our own, I think that puts us in some legal jeopardy. I don't see any authority under Education Law 1709 as a school board to be able to impose this on this basis. So I would be against mandatory testing for extracurriculars.
The board at its last meeting had already indicated that they'd supported that.
I'm one person on the board.
Yep, no, I understand.
But it was something that we did vote on it at the last meeting because that was in the original plan that we voted on at the last meeting.
If you're all set, we're all set.
Okay. So next area, President's Report. I don't have anything official. Again, I just want to, since this is our first business meeting, essentially, since we started the school year, I just want to thank everybody for their diligence in getting ready for the school year. It was a great staff opening day. It was a great opening day for all the schools, all the students, getting everybody in. All the administrative teams just worked tirelessly to get ready. Mike Coughlin and his team, special shout out. You know, there's been a lot of hoops that they've had to jump through, and everything was ready and ready to go for our staff and our students. All of the staff members that really did a lot of work to prepare. And it's just so exciting to see the students back in school, hear the excitement, be at the athletic events with the entire community, kind of cheering on and showing school spirit, being able to go out on the stadium for the first time. So it's really nice to see the improvements that are being made in the district. And, I hope that it was a very positive start to the school year, and I hope it just continues to get better from here. So thank you to everybody, staff, students, parents, everybody who really made opening a success. Then we have the Audit Committee report.
Yes, we met a couple days ago, as Tom Zuber mentioned, went over the external audit in great detail. Regarding the corrective action plan, he had that posted, I think, on the last slide. Two of the items at the top there, the salary notices and the school lunch fund, should both be completed sometime this fall. The bottom two items, the cyber risk management, should be completed by the end of the year. And then there's a new standard GASP statement number 87 regarding leases. Still waiting for some guidance from our external auditor on that, and that would be included in next summer's audit in August 2022. And that was it.
Any questions or comments? Okay. There was no policy committee meeting or report, so we'll move on to our finance items for action. We have 8.02 to 8.16. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Any comments, questions on any of those items? Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Any abstentions? Okay, Our personnel items for action, we just have our HR recommendations, 9.02. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any comments or questions? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, nay. Any abstentions? Next are our miscellaneous items for action, 10.02 to 10.04. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Any comments or questions on these? Warren?
I have a question on 10.04, the service agreement with the Tang Math. So I have a series of questions. When we engage in these conferences, will we be able then to access all of the learning manipulatives and games that were on the website, or is that an extra fee beyond what we've contracted for?
Yes, I'm going to let Tiffany Owen address that specific right now.
So this contract really is just for the professional learning to teach the why of the CPA progression in math, what our teachers are looking for. They've been asking, so it does not come with manipulatives. This is more the learning behind how to instruct math in the classroom.
All right, so if that's the issue, then this is process driven, right? It's a process on how to teach math?
Correct, yes. It's best instruction, best strategies to use, and also it'll help to inform good decisions when developing our curriculum and the specific models we would like to use in the classrooms. Yeah.
And also, we were working on a math resource adoption, and part of this work adds into that. You'll recall that rather than adding and purchasing a resource and be a resource-driven curriculum, we're doing the best practices in instruction to meet the standards, and then finding the resources after to determine what meets it. So this is part of that progression and process of backwards design to determine, what are the best practices as we go out in the next phase to find a resource that meets these practices.
All right, so I'm going to vote no on this, and what you are is where you were when, which is a fancy way, I think, of saying your life experiences kind of dictate. So I was in Horseheads. I was trained in Madeline Hunter. I was trained in Arlene Minton. I was trained in Spencer Kagan. I was trained in curriculum maps and the 5-year plans. And all of the things they had in common were that they said, process-driven, if you follow these procedures, you will reach educational nirvana. Test scores will rise, student engagement will increase, and, my experience is if the first person was right, why would you need 2, 3, and 4? So we never did reach the nirvana. So I don't know, this is harsh to say, but I see them as grifters because there's no real accountability. We're going to approve this tonight. I have no question about that. but we don't know if it works. I mean, I could tell you my own experience. I don't think a lot of the things the district paid for in the past really got the things that they wanted to get. So I would like, in the contract it says, you know, after we have the ability to cancel the contract after 30 days.
Correct.
I would like the ability to say, what's the criteria after the first conference? Did it work? Did it get us anything? As a board member, I've never had that discussion, and certainly as an employee of the district, that never got down to us. So those are my reasons. I just wish we would get away from educational leadership by consultant. That's my big thing. I think we have talented people and staff and management that can get us the same results without constantly paying outsiders to come in.
Mr. Conklin, I do agree with you from the past and so forth. As we've tried to address curriculum, you know how in the past it was more top-down telling you what the curriculum would be, or the consultant. This is something that's been developed with our teachers that they are asking for, correct, Mr. Gill?
The curriculum math editing team is asking for this. They've gone out to this individual on several occasions. Our kindergarten team worked with this gentleman and attended his webinars this summer. He's well sought after and respected by our teachers. We're meeting a need that we think will add to our future curriculum development. Progressions of maths through the concrete, the pictorial, and the abstract, much needed and desired by our teachers, that they want to go into those manipulatives and understand those processes and how we address students' needs. I feel we're meeting a request of our teachers. As far as previous and those other things that you discussed as far as educational leadership, there's no doubting that the effect size of setting a goal, tracking a student against that goal, and achieving that goal and celebrating that success are standards and the effect size of student learning and adult learning. This is not that. This is a very specific, targeted, the why of math instruction, and it's not a highfalutin process, but rather a very specific way to address math instruction that is being sought after.
All right, so once this passes and then there's a demand by the teachers for the manipulatives and the other add-ons, do we have any idea of what that's going to cost in addition to this contract?
That would be through our normal, as I referenced earlier, our resource development. As we look for a resource for math, we're currently have been using Go Math. It fits a need, but many of our teachers are looking to other resources to fit the gaps that don't meet the new New York State standards, or for that matter, the old New York State standards. So this particular instruction and learning style will be used to say this is how we're going to work it in to meet the standards. And then, yes, we will be purchasing we have purchased manipulatives. We'll continue to purchase manipulatives as it's part of the instruction. We did it with phonics. We'll do it with our math instruction, our key aspects of math and ELA instruction, especially fundamental learning. And then we'll look to provide a resource to our teachers to have as a base to build upon as a reference source, but not providing, as Tom said earlier, a resource and said, do this this way. We're trusting our teachers to develop that Horseheads curriculum, which we're very proud of.
In a way, that's what, like you heard Mr. Gill talk about Go Math. Go Math was brought in as sort of a canned curriculum, follow this and so forth. I agree with you. We never really had a written curriculum, and that's where the written curriculum is now being developed based on the teacher and staff needs to develop the resource, similar to what we were doing in English, and going away from the treasures to the staff-developed curriculum so that we can eventually get to using our own professionals. This is more a resource for them so that they get what they need to go away from those canned products. That way, the allocations that we have to make each year for like Go Math would be diverted to use and utilize to support the needs of developing that curriculum and the resources for it.
All right, so just to be clear, the conference is well received, and the staff now says, we want the manipulatives, we want the games. Are we committed financially
We're not
to
going to jump to
doing
that right away.
Or are we just going to say, we put a person in front of you, I'm glad you were happy with that person, but we have no money to get the things that the person was promoting in their conference?
As Tom said, this would be a reallocation of current purchasing for Go Math. It would simply fold over into this, whether it be a textbook, New York State aided line, or a supply line that currently has been purchasing items for our teachers. It would be just a transfer from buying from a current program, Go Math, to this. But I want to back up and say, this is a best practice in instruction. We're not purchasing a curriculum from Mr. Tang, but rather, learning about the instructional practice, which does, as you mentioned earlier, as many do, have a research-based background. So we're going to take this information to make a decision on what resource to purchase. It will not be the end-all, be-all decision on a purchase, obviously, because it meets very specific needs and instructional models. It's not here's page 1, day 1, do this. That's not the approach we're looking for in our curriculum as we entrust our teachers to provide and meet the standards as required by New York State.
Plus, I think you know from history, you say you do something, but then you say, I don't have the money to do it. As we've done with English and ELA, we make sure that the money is available to enhance our curriculum, and that's where I have Tony, I have Tiffany, I have her coaches, and they work with Katie, and we try to make sure that our allocations are repurposed or to guarantee that they have what they need once the curriculum's established so that they can move forward. With the expectation, there are added instructional benefits for all our teachers and our students.
Also to take note is the budgetary line. This is part of our ARP monies that we posted and discussed as far as professional learning for staff. It's part of our grant funded one time to take advantage of that money.
Okay.
All right. Thank you for the discussion.
No problem.
Candy, you have my vote, correct? Okay, thank you.
We were hoping we'd sway it.
Any other comments or discussions on any of the items from 10.02 to 10.04? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, nay. And we have Warren and yours. You have that, Candy? Okay. And any abstentions? Okay. Next up are board member comments. If anybody has a comment that they'd like to make before we adjourn. Doug?
So I inadvertently voted in favor of 8.07 as I needed to abstain on that. So under Robert's rules, I'd like to appeal to you, Ms. Dale, to change my vote to an abstention on the financial section.
Okay. That's fine. Do we need to?
Under Robert's rules, if any board member objects to it, then
Okay.
it doesn't change, but if nobody objects, then...
Does anybody object to that change? No? Okay, so we will note that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Brian?
Just had a quick thing on I just want to thank the district. Off the Horseheads district website is a COVID-19 weekly update. And, I want to thank the district for posting those numbers. It looks like there's going to be weekly numbers, which has all the schools, all the cases, staff, and students. So I think that's a great way for the district and the community to track how many cases we actually do have in the school. So thank you for tabulating the data and making it so clear and easy to read. Thank you.
Okay, anything else? Warren?
I'd just like to, am I on? I'd just like to say thank you on the opening day portion. The thing I enjoyed the most was all the new staff by building and by department. I had never seen anything like that, so I thought that was really, really a great idea. So I hope that continues into the future.
Okay. All right, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Any abstentions? Okay, thank you.
Concludes our Board of Education for September 16th. Thank you for all that have